Hello, so I figured I would make a quick video because I only have 5 minutes on Screencastify anyway, and compare the 2016 and 2020 elections. I will actually be comparing the 2012 and 2020 elections in my next video. But I want to compare the 2016 and 2020 elections because, in spite of the fact that it flipped from Republican to Democrat, there weren't actually too many changes. As you can see, nearly half of the electoral votes were in the lean Democrat category, which essentially means a swing of between 1% and 5%. And there were 129 electoral votes that swung towards Republicans, just not in the correct areas to enable a Democratic, a Republican flip. I mean, actually, the last time that electoral votes moved in opposite directions was between 2000 and 2004. Even though, again, you had about the same amount of votes switching to Democrat in this election to Republican in the 2020 election, one of the states that moved Democrat, New Hampshire, swung enough. It swung by 2.6% to push it over from the lean Republican category to the lean Democratic category. And New Mexico and Iowa, despite swinging by less than 1%, swung enough to flip from Democrat to Republican as they went from tilt Democrat. New Mexico by 0.06%, Iowa by 0.31%. And New Hampshire was Republican by 1.3%, and in New Hampshire goes Democrat by 1.4%. Iowa goes to Bush by 0.67%. New Mexico goes to Bush by 0.79%. But anyway, comparing past elections, comparing past elections, sorry about that. So you can see, the most significant, 5 states flipped from Democrat to Republican. Arizona swung by 3.8%. Georgia swung by 5.3%. That was the most dramatic swing of any state that swung, because Georgia was actually not lean Republican, but it was actually likely Republican, voting for Trump by about 5.2% in 2016, and yet it still flipped to Democrat. So don't think that no matter what kind of a lead you have in a previous election, even if the electoral swing is small, it could still make a difference. Pennsylvania swung Democrat by 1.9%. Wisconsin swung Democrat by 1.4% because it went from tilt Republican to tilt Democrat. Michigan swung by 3%. So again, now Georgia had a substantial swing, but Maryland swung 6.8%, Delaware swung 7.5%, largely because Joe Biden is from there. Vermont swung 9.5%, New Hampshire swung 7%, Maine at large swung 6.2%, with the first district swinging by 8.3%. Second district swung 2.9%. Massachusetts swung 6.3%. Connecticut swung 6.4%. Rhode Island swung 5.3%. Minnesota swung 5.6%. Nebraska at large was 5.9%. The second district was 8.9%. That actually flipped from Republican to Democrat. My bad. The first district swung 5.8%. Kansas swung 6%. Colorado swung 8.6%. Oregon swung 5.1%. So as we could see, Vermont had the most substantial swing. It was actually the most Democratic state, excluding D.C., in 2020, which D.C. actually swung very slightly Republican. Now, most of the Republican swings were actually tilt. Like Illinois was 0.07%, Arkansas was 0.7%, Nevada was 0.02%, so not nearly enough to swing it, though it was the closest state to flipping to Republican. California swung 0.95%. Florida swung 2.2%, Hawaii swung 2.7%, and Utah swung 2.4%. So they were the only substantial swings, of which Florida was the only swing state to have swung. But since it voted Republican in 2016, that really wouldn't have mattered. There were some tilt Democratic swings, like in New York and Ohio, and Nebraska's third congressional district in Idaho. Like Nebraska's third district swung about 1%, New York by a little under 0.5%, Ohio by 0.1%, Idaho by just about 1%. But overall, there weren't actually too many substantial swings. Like 2012 to 2016, for example, you can actually see that there were some substantial swings. Utah swung 30% to the left. North Dakota swung 16% to the right. Iowa swung 15% to the right. West Virginia swung 15% to the right, and Maine second swung 19% to the right. A lot more substantial swings happened from 2012 to 2016 and 2016 to 2020, in spite of 74 electoral votes flipping and a president ultimately switching due to the election.